Take a look at that. Performing manual labor despite his advanced age. Isn't that pathetic? As I worked, a number of new workers who seemed quite confident gossiped and made fun of me. His lack of education most likely prevented him from landing a respectable career. Let's be careful not to do it. The new hires smirked at me as they said their bit in a disparaging manner and walked away. Is it unbelievable that those men joined this company? I let out a sigh and gave the task my best effort. Later, when the new employees saw me, they kept making fun of me and insulting me. All right. I suppose I'll give them a lesson. Steve Anderson is my name, 65 years old. The company where I work as a janitor has the largest market share in the industry for a particular product. In contrast to outsourcing to outside cleaning firms, this corporation has an internal cleaning department named the Cleaning Management Division, which makes it rather unique. My days are devoted to internal cleaning, and I am a member of this Cleaning Management Division. Cleaning is a profession that I adore. For workers to be able to work comfortably, the office must be kept tidy. Additionally, I get to connect with other departments while cleaning, which makes work interesting. Many colleagues approach me because I constantly try to keep a grin on my face. I'm frequently asked for advice on greetings, light chat, and even personal or professional issues. Intriguingly, there are tales that after consulting me, issues are fixed. As a result, I am respected by younger staff members as a reliable advisor and am well informed within the organization. Other janitors are also knowledgeable and aware of the majority of office rumors. They say stuff like, "Don't make enemies with the Cleaning Management Division if you want to survive in this company." Steve, good morning. How do you feel today? Ethan, the chief of the Cleaning Management Division, welcomed me to the office early in the morning. Good morning, sir. I smiled and said, "Thank you for always talking to me." Leaning in closer, Ethan nodded and whispered, "Please be careful not to overdo it today. We value the effort you have put out." He always stresses not to overdo it every morning, for whatever reason. I'm not doing anything very demanding. Steve, good morning. It appears that Ethan put you under further pressure. It was Olivia, my cleaning mentor and the oldest employee in the Cleaning Management Division. She laughed and came over to me. Good morning, Olivia. You heard him just now. You truly have sharp ears. Well, you can't have secret conversations in front of me, Olivia said proudly. Then she turned to me and continued, Well, today is the new employee's entrance ceremony. Ethan is worried about what you might do. What do you mean? I haven't done anything before. That's true. But you're Steve the helper. With a cheerful laugh, Olivia started preparing for cleaning. Honestly, it seems like both Ethan and Olivia think of me as a troublemaker or something. I sighed in frustration while preparing for cleaning. Today is the new employee's entrance ceremony. I wanted the new employees to see the company as a clean place, so I put extra effort into cleaning. As I cleaned the hallway near the conference room, which served as the entrance ceremony venue, I could see the new employees. Some looked nervous and pale, others were fidgety and restless. A few were chatting with fellow new hires. Seeing the diverse group of new employees made me feel warm inside. While cleaning, I silently cheered them on in my heart. Look at that, doing manual labor even as an old man. Isn't it pitiful? Whispered a few new employees who were about to enter the venue, clearly talking about me. He probably couldn't get a decent job from a lacking educational background. We're fine in that regard. It's all about building a career now. Even if you have good education without a career, you might end up like him. They said this in a mocking tone before entering the venue, smirking at me. Can you believe those guys got into this company? I sighed and put my all into the work. With that attitude, they must be really confident in their education. I can't believe the interviewers fell for it. I sighed in frustration and continued to work. While cleaning another hallway, the new employees who had just finished the entrance ceremony passed by me. Good job on the entrance ceremony. I greeted them with a smile. Some returned the smile, some just nodded, and others completely ignored me. At the end of the line of new employees were those young guys who had mocked me earlier, and when they saw me, they wore malicious grins. "Good job on the entrance ceremony," I said to them just like I did with the others. They laughed under their breath and said things like, "Ooh, old man's stuck with this job because he's a bottom feeder, right? And do your best at cleaning so they don't call you a waste of salary," in hushed voices as they walked away. Damn. You can't just let people like them in? As I felt disheartened, I heard a voice from behind saying, "That's way too rude of those new employees. Allowing people like them into the company will be its downfall." It was Olivia. Apparently, she could hear those whispered insults loud and clear. She seemed very angry. "Steve, why didn't you say anything back? Aren't you upset being treated like that?" "Well, I thought if I replied, they would just laugh at me even more. Besides, Ethan told me not to overexert myself." Olivia didn't seem satisfied, but I was grateful that she was speaking up on my behalf. Well, those new employees are definitely getting too cocky. Guess I should teach them a lesson. With that thought in mind, I grinned and went back to cleaning. In this company, after joining, there is a 1-week orientation for new employees. Based on their performance and preferences during this time, their assigned department is decided, and the department assignments are announced on the last day. After being encouraged by all the executives, I observed the new employee orientation while cleaning. The new employee who had insulted me seemed enthusiastic when there was a trainer present. However, when the trainer was absent, they ridiculed the new employees who had lower educational backgrounds than them. "You? Did you graduate from that third-rate university and still manage to get into this company? I'd hate to be thought of as being in the same league as you." "Oh, that women's college? There are a lot of cute girls, but their intelligence is not up to par, right? You must have been selected based on looks, huh?" It seemed like they were looking down on not only me but also others. Listening to their conversation, I found out that they were graduates from some of the top universities in the country. To think that people like them could be from a prestigious university, I felt bad for the institutions. While I believed that education and academic achievements were important, I also thought that qualities like consideration for others and the ability to cooperate with those around you were equally, if not more, important. It appeared that these qualities were lacking in them. I felt irritated by their behavior but continued to observe them. And then, in the blink of an eye, a week passed. Today was the final day of the new employee training. The new recruits seemed to be in high spirits, probably because they were eagerly anticipating the announcement of their assigned departments. "We're finally done with this useless and boring training. Let's get to work in our respective departments already." Yay! Right? We don't need things like customer service and business etiquette at all. "Hey, weren't you hoping to join the International Strategy Department?" "That's right. And weren't you aiming for the Corporate Planning Department?" "Well, with our academic backgrounds and qualifications, it should be a piece of cake." On the final day of training, during lunch break, as I returned from my meal, I spotted those new recruits talking in front of a store near the company. Perhaps because they were outdoors and felt unnoticed, they seemed relaxed, speaking ill of the training right in front of the company's entrance, even when no one was around. And the fact that they still had hopes of getting into their desired departments was somewhat infuriating. While I was genuinely appalled by their attitude, I thought it would be too troublesome if they spotted me, so I quickly entered the company building. As the lunch break ended, I dressed in a suit and engaged in casual conversations with my familiar colleagues. Just then, those new recruits walked by. "Oh, why is the janitor wearing a suit? The usual dirty work clothes suit a bottom beater like you better. Getting all dressed up is so grunge." Even in a suit, you can't hide that bottom feeder vibe. Pathetic, right? They muttered insults at me in hushed tones, chuckling to themselves, and headed towards the training venue. They probably couldn't see the other employees from their angle. If they had, they wouldn't have dared to use such foul language. "You see, everything I said was true, wasn't it?" I said to the employees. They remained silent, their faces pale, trembling all over as they just stared at those newcomers' backs. And now it was time for the final part of the training, the words of encouragement from the executives. The new recruits sat in their chairs, fidgeting nervously, and listened to what the executives had to say. Usually, after the president's speech, the head of the HR department would announce department assignments, but this time it was a bit different. Originally, my speech was supposed to conclude the new employee training. However, this year the chairman also wants to say a few words, so the chairman will wrap things up for us, the president said with a somewhat exasperated tone. The chairman, too? There are rumors that many people haven't even seen his face, right? Yay! The chairman rarely shows himself. Seeing the chairman might be a stroke of luck. The new recruits began to buzz with excitement. The chairman of this company had retired from active management a long time ago, and now very few people had actually seen him. This rumor had clearly reached the ears of the new recruits. Amidst the commotion of the new recruits, I stepped onto the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your hard work during the new employee training. I'm Steve Anderson, the chairman of our company. The venue buzzed with excitement. Well, considering that many of them had probably seen me in my janitorial uniform, their reaction was understandable. The troublesome new employees with stunned expressions froze as they looked at me. While working as a janitor, I have been observing your training efforts. I'm truly delighted that enthusiastic individuals like you have joined our company. Thank you very much for choosing us. However, I directed my gaze towards those individuals. Unfortunately, among this year's new recruits, there are a few who seem to enjoy looking down on and berating others. I find that very disappointing. Their faces turned pale rapidly. Other new recruits were also glancing in their direction. Work is built on mutual support. There's no superiority or inferiority here. I hope you'll keep that in mind. We look forward to your future contributions. I finished my speech and then left the room. Following me from behind was Ethan, who had just attended the executive's words of encouragement, dressed in a suit. Seriously? You never used to do this kind of thing before, and suddenly we're giving speeches this year? Please stop making a mess of things. Oh, don't be so mad, sir, I teased Ethan, who was clearly annoyed. Sir, please, for the love of God, stop calling me that. It's creepy. All right, I get it, Ethan. I apologize for springing this on you out of the blue, but I think the real problem here is that the HR department has some screws loose. Ethan is the head of the cleaning management department, one of the company directors, and my secretary. He's an extremely talented man who always goes through a lot because of my whims. This time, too, he had a tough time getting involved in my sudden idea. Ah, well, certainly, we will thoroughly review the structure of the HR department's training and recruitment. The issue of hiring individuals who behave arrogantly based solely on their educational backgrounds could become a significant problem for our company in the future. Ethan didn't blame me any further and immediately started taking notes in his notebook. Well, the president and vice president have seen their attitude directly, so they'll take action soon enough. You don't have to worry too much. After lunch break, I was chatting with familiar employees who turned out to be the president and vice president. I'd already informed them about the situation with those newcomers, but it seemed they hadn't taken it too seriously. However, witnessing me being berated firsthand seemed to make them realize the seriousness of the situation. While we've had various types of new recruits in the past, these newcomers who have been looking down on everyone and acting all high and mighty since the entrance ceremony are a first. I'm looking forward to seeing how they will handle things from now on. I placed my hand on Ethan's shoulder with a smile. Ethan, who probably realized my intentions, let out a deep sigh. In the evening of that day, the new recruits assigned to the cleaning management department came to greet me. Among them were those troublesome newcomers. I had pulled some strings with the higher-ups to have these troublemakers assigned here. All of them had faces that showed either dissatisfaction or fear. It was hard to tell. Welcome to the cleaning management department. As the name suggests, this department is responsible for maintaining sanitary conditions within the company and managing large-scale cleaning activities. Ethan greeted the newcomers with a smile. Our trainers for you will be Olivia and Steve. They will be providing guidance, and it's quite an honor to be trained by our company's chairman and former head of the General Affairs Department. The newcomers remained silent, their eyes widened in surprise. In fact, half of the employees in this department are experienced executives. Olivia has been supporting the company since its establishment and was supposed to become a director. However, she chose to become a contract employee and a cleaner, saying, I don't want to become any more important. I just want to clean. Be grateful, you guys. All the current executives have experience in this department. In a way, you're on a path to success, Olivia said with a smug expression. Indeed, it was my policy to have executives go to the cleaning management department. However, that didn't necessarily mean it was a path to success. If you don't like the work here, you're free to quit. However, there's a lot you can learn in this department, such as empathy and a broad perspective. It's not an exaggeration to say that the knowledge and skills you will gain here are essential for your future survival. I added, trying to encourage them. The troublemakers reluctantly replied, Thank you, with lowered heads. From the next day onwards, we drilled the newcomers on the ins and outs of internal cleaning in the name of training. At first, they were dissatisfied, but they gradually learned the ropes and grew as individuals. I used to think cleaning was just a chore, but it's changed my perspective so much. As the chairman said, I can see various things I couldn't before. I now realize how small and pathetic I was when I used to act all high and mighty based on my education alone, one of the troublemakers confessed, looking embarrassed. An emergency. There's an ambulance coming. One of our patients is pregnant. The late-night silence was broken by the announcement, which reverberated throughout the facility. I took out my cleaning tools and froze for a second. Calls for ambulances were not new. However, a tense sensation arose in my chest. A few seconds later, a stretcher was carried in as the hospital doors sprang wide. On it lay a pregnant woman. My heart fell even more when I saw the woman holding her hand next to her. Michael. When she saw me, my sister Emily came running over. She had tears in her eyes and they were bloodshot. Please come to her aid. My best friend is her. Emily's frantic voice brought me back to the present. The scene during Emily's surgery, however, where red blood spilled out and stained the operating table scarlet, was another recollection that lingered in the back of my mind. My hands were shaking. Sweat ran cold down my cheeks. Things became worse the more panicked I felt, until my thoughts went blank. The bleeding dragged. It will not cease. Am I also able to save this patient? Or will I repeat the same error? I might not be able to do this. I am no longer a doctor. That's what I kept telling myself. The medical staff hurried around me in anticipation of an urgent procedure. The patient's condition was obviously getting worse, but no one was available to do the surgery. Nobody would assist. Then I stepped forward despite the trembling in my entire body. Could I save her this time? No, I must save her. Michael is my name. I used to be a surgeon, and I am 38 years old. My high IQ and innate aptitude for academics, particularly in science, have been well known since I was a little boy. I was the type of student who could get a perfect score, even if they only skimmed the textbook the night before an exam. Teachers had great expectations for me, and people would say I was on a different level. I fulfilled those aspirations by attending medical school. It never seemed like a chore to study medicine. Actually, my fascination with the medical field grew as I dug further, immersing myself as though pushing myself to the maximum. I was at the top of my class even in college, and it was common for instructors and fellow students to refer to me as a genius. My reputation as a surgeon only became better once I graduated. Everyone around me praised me for my keen ability to evaluate even the most complicated issues and reach calm, accurate conclusions. I eventually gained notoriety as the brilliant surgeon. I specialized in procedures that were too complex for most doctors to do. I could make the initial cut without hesitation, even if the tumor was entangled with blood arteries or nerves. I didn't falter in delicate procedures at all. Every stitch and cut was done precisely. It seemed as though time had stopped in the operating room, and I was totally focused on the patient in front of me.
Michael is capable.
Not only did co-workers use that statement frequently, but patients and their families did as well. I have seen it numerous times. Worried families were visibly relieved to learn that Dr. Adams would be performing surgery. That confidence was founded on more than simply my surgical prowess. It resulted from careful planning and preparation. I would thoroughly review the patient's chart and perform a ton of simulations prior to any procedures. In difficult circumstances, I meticulously planned every stage of the process using 3D models and the most recent imaging technology. My strategy was to prepare for everything by foreseeing every possibility. However, it wasn't all. I always tried to allay my patients' anxieties as a doctor. I spoke with them before the surgery, avoiding medical jargon and explaining everything as simply as possible, including the dangers and what would happen. I exerted every effort to give them the impression that I can trust this person with my life. In the medical field, the weight of life is always present. As a surgeon, I knew that my skills and decisions could determine a patient's future. That's why whenever I stepped into the operating room and picked up the scalpel, I made sure I was free of hesitation or doubt. There was only one thing in my mind, the unwavering resolve to save the patient. But all that confidence and trust shattered in an instant during Emily's surgery. She had been born with a heart condition, but she lived a normal life without any major issues. Then one day, when she was 33, her condition suddenly worsened and emergency surgery became necessary. Because Emily specifically asked I want my brother to operate, I agreed to take on the surgery. To me, Emily is irreplaceable family. After we lost our mother early and our father was always busy, she was the one who kept our home together with her bright spirit. I wanted to save her no matter what. With that determination, I entered the operating room. But I made a fatal mistake. I damaged a major blood vessel. Bright red blood spilled across the table, staining everything in sight. That scene is forever burned into my memory. Damn it. Stop the bleeding. It won't stop. I shouted, trying to refocus my hands. But the more I panicked, the less control I had over my fingers. Sweat dripped from my forehead, soaking the inside of my mask. Cold sweat ran down my back and my heart pounded in my ears. My hands shook as I gripped the heist, unable to operate it properly. Emily's blood kept flowing, unstoppable. With each drop, my confidence was stripped away. Stay calm, I whispered to myself, but the turmoil in my heart wouldn't stop. Emily's smiling face kept flashing through my mind. She's going to die because of me. That thought took hold of my entire being, and my hands trembled even more. My vision blurred. I couldn't tell if it was sweat or tears. My fingers, still clutching the scalpel, went numb and cold, and my mind went blank. At that moment, Michael stepped back. Ryan's sharp voice snapped me out of my daze. Ryan is the head of this hospital and a veteran surgeon. He has saved countless lives, always making precise decisions during every operation. Because it was a family member surgery, he had been present as backup just in case. But I have to do it. I tried to object, forcing the words from the back of my throat, but they lacked conviction. When I looked at Ryan, trembling, he was staring straight at me with calm, unwavering eyes. The patient comes first. Let me take over. Those words pierced my chest like a blade. Gritting my teeth, I reluctantly stepped aside. With each of Ryan's instructions, the atmosphere in the operating room grew more focused. The nurses' movements became synchronized, and the hopeless situation began to shift. But what rose up inside me wasn't relief. It was despair. I had failed as a doctor. That thought echoed in my mind, pulling me into a deep, bottomless darkness. What if I couldn't save Emily's life? Maybe I didn't even deserve to be in that room. Eventually, thanks to Ryan's calm judgment and expert hands, the surgery was somehow a success. Emily's life was saved because of Ryan.
And it was because of me that her life had been in danger in the first place.
That unshakable guilt weighed heavily on me. Sitting in a chair, I just stared at the scene in the operating room. Ryan, checking on Emily's condition, stood tall and steady, so different from me. The bitterness and deep despair clenched my chest, and I couldn't utter a single word as I gripped my fist. After that day, I could no longer hold a scalpel. Every time I reached for one, the tremor and fear from that day came rushing back, freezing me in place.
These hands, meant to save lives, might only bring danger.
With that thought, all my confidence disappeared. I gave up being a doctor and was hired as a janitor at Ryan's hospital. Now I spend my days gripping a mop, moving mechanically. That's the only way I can still be involved in medicine. As I mopped the white hospital corridors, memories of who I used to be came flooding back when I was a genius surgeon, and the words "thank you" from patients saved me. Now, doctors casually say things like, "Must be nice having such an easy job at your age." Even patients joke with a smile, "Being a janitor must be tough too, huh?"
To them, it's just lighthearted teasing. But to me, it cuts like sarcasm.
But there was one person in this hospital who didn't see me as just a janitor. She saw me as a person.
Ashley.
She looked stunning in her white coat. Her gentle smile and composed manner earning the trust of both patients and staff. Her presence alone seemed to shift the energy in the corridor as she walked.
Thank you for always keeping everything so clean.
Just a simple remark in passing, but her voice had a way of cleansing the heart. And each time I felt a small warmth rise in my chest. But to her, I was still just a janitor, nothing more.
I kept telling myself I no longer had the right to be a doctor. So I kept pushing the mop forward, numb and empty. One night, when Ashley was on duty, I was cleaning the quiet hospital as usual, mop in hand.
The silence of the night made my loneliness feel even heavier. But that night, something felt different. Something was off. Emergency. An ambulance is arriving. We have a pregnant patient. A tense voice rang out from the hospital speakers, piercing the stillness of the night. I stood frozen, still holding my cleaning supplies. Normally, I'd ignore it and return to my work, but this time my feet wouldn't move. The doors to the ambulance bay burst open and a pregnant woman on a stretcher was rushed in. Beside her, holding her hand with a terrified expression, was Emily.
Emily. The name slipped out before I realized.
She turned toward me. In that instant, a strange stir rose in my chest.
Fear and desperation were etched into her face. "Michael, this is my friend. Please help her."
Emily ran toward me, recognizing me.
"I'm not..."
Before I could finish, the voices of medical staff filled the air.
"The patient has a placental abruption, heavy bleeding."
"Where's the obstetrician?"
"They're in surgery. Won't make it in time."
I could see it. This woman was in real danger, but I still couldn't move.
I could still feel what it was like to hold a scalpel.
But ever since Emily's surgery, these hands had only brought me pain. Emily ran after the stretcher as it was rushed toward the operating room. I remained frozen in place. My chest tightened. The pregnant woman, Emily's friend, already looked pale when I saw her earlier, and her lips had turned bluish.
"Prep the oar."
Ashley's voice echoed through the corridor. She clutched the patient's chart, giving orders with a tense expression.
Even in her voice, the anxiety was clear.
Her eyes darted over the chart, glancing up now and then to read the expressions of the staff.
What am I doing? Am I just going to stand here and watch again?
The question rang out inside me. My vision blurred. Emily's desperate face rose in my mind, and something deep inside me screamed.
But still, I didn't move. The oar must have been nearly ready.
Staff bustled around and Ashley stood by the stretcher, checking the patient's condition. She gently touched the woman's arm, but her expression showed hesitation. "Dr. Stevenson, can you perform the surgery?" one of the staff asked.
"I can't."
Ashley faltered. Her hand trembled slightly. She couldn't get the words out, just stared at the patient's face. You could see the conflict within her. She wasn't sure if she could save the life in front of her. I knew that feeling. I had been there myself, and I could see how that fear was paralyzing her.
"Is there anyone else who can operate?"
Ashley's strained voice was laced with urgency and frustration. But I could tell her frustration wasn't directed at anyone else.
It was at herself.
"Michael." Emily's voice snapped me back to the moment. She ran up and grabbed my arm, her eyes brimming with tears. "Please, with your hands, save her. She's my friend. If this keeps up." She choked on her words, and the sight pierced straight through me. I closed my eyes. The memory of nearly failing during Emily's surgery surged up again, and a cold sweat ran over my body.
I answered, my voice trembling.
"I can't. I'm not a doctor anymore. I can't hold a scalpel."
"You can do it." Emily raised her voice.
"Maybe you did run away back then, but I'm alive now, aren't I? I survived. What's the point in clinging to the past? You've saved so many lives. There's proof of that. Stop wallowing in guilt and save her." Her words felt like they blew the lid off something inside me.
Each word sliced through my chest like a blade. I looked once more at the operating room.
Ashley stood beside the patient, her shoulders hunched, eyes cast down. I focused on the woman lying on the operating table. Her face was pale, her breathing shallow and uneven, and her stomach barely moved. But I could feel the presence of a life inside her.
It weighed heavily on my chest. And then another scene rose in my mind. The moment of Emily's surgery. Back then, I had been full of confidence.
Even the most difficult operation, I believed I could handle it.
But reality shattered that belief in an instant.
The moment I cut a major vessel and triggered massive bleeding, everything fell apart.
The blood-soaked table. Emily's fragile breasts. My hands trembled uncontrollably, drenched in cold sweat.
I tried to issue commands through a quivering voice, but my mind had gone completely blank.
What if I make the same mistake again? The thought of this woman ending up like Emily chilled me to the core. I tried to breathe, but my chest felt like it was clamped shut. But then Emily's tearful face came into view. And another voice echoed in my mind.
"If you run now, what happens? That patient, the life inside her, they'll die because you walked away."
The oar was on the brink of collapse.
Ashley stood frozen, still clutching the chart with shaking hands.
The other doctors were scrambling with emergency cases. None were available to operate. If I don't do it, what happens to this life? Each time I wrestled with myself. Another cold sweat rolled down my back. Still, my eyes stayed locked on the woman's stomach.
There was a life in there, real and waiting to be born, and I could feel the weight of it settle in my palms.
No more running. You almost lost Emily. You really want to lose someone else again? As I argued with myself, her words returned to me. Please help her. I couldn't resist that plea. I took a deep breath and my feet began to move on their own. Clenching my trembling fist, I stepped beside Ashley. "I'll perform the surgery." My voice was calm, shockingly calm and unmistakably firm. For a moment, the chaos around us seemed to quiet down. The last shred of doubt inside me began to dissolve. Right now, all that matters is saving the life in front of us. "What are you saying?" Ashley looked up at me in surprise, her eyes filled with confusion and fear. Her hands were still trembling ever so slightly, but as I declared I would take the lead, it seemed her shaking eased just a little. "Are you serious? You'll operate?" Her voice was tinged with disbelief, and understandably so. A janitor suddenly declaring he would perform surgery. I took a deep breath and met her gaze. "I'm a doctor. I was a surgeon."
I meant to say everything in those few words, but those words seemed to shock the surrounding staff as well, and a wave of murmurs spread through the room.
"It'll be fine."
Ryan's deep voice cut through the tension like a blade. He walked over slowly, speaking quietly to Ashley.
"Ashley, trust him."
"Mr. Keller, but he's just a janitor." Ashley, clearly confused, turned to Ryan and voiced her concern. He glanced at me for a moment. There was certainty in his eyes. Then he turned back to her and spoke slowly. He was once one of the most brilliant surgeons in the field. "Michael, you've never heard that name?" Ashley gasped. Her eyes darted as if recalling something, but no words followed. Michael performed countless complex surgeries at a young age and saved many lives. But one day, he nearly lost someone important on the operating table and blamed himself. That's why he gave up the scalpel. Though his tone was calm, warmth seeped through Ryan's voice. "Still, Mr. Keller." Ashley began to protest, but Ryan gently interrupted. "But Michael's skill and experience are still intact. I'll vouch for him. There's no one more qualified right now." Ashley remained silent. She was clearly struggling inside. Then finally, she exhaled deeply and looked me straight in the eyes. "Understood. If Mr. Keller says so, I'll trust you." Her words cleared the last of my doubt. I gave a quiet nod and turned back toward the doors. "There's no time. Let's begin the surgery." My words set the staff into motion. Ashley, still tense, followed close behind. In my heart, I made a vow. This would be the last time I let my past hold me down. By saving this life, I would reclaim myself. No more hesitation, only focus. Beyond the doors, the team was scrambling to finish preparations. The patient's vital signs on the monitor screamed, "Danger!" "Michael." Ashley stood beside me, her voice slightly trembling. "Please, truly, I'm counting on you." Her voice carried a mixture of fear and hope. I gave a small nod and turned my focus fully to the procedure ahead. When Ryan entered the operating room, the tension in the air heightened even more. His presence was commanding, bringing with it a sense of clarity, even amid chaos. "Michael, let me say this again." Ryan looked straight at me. "I'm entrusting this to you because I know you can do it. No one else is more capable of saving this life." His words struck deep within me. Ryan believed in me. That alone carried more weight than anything else. I took a deep breath, collecting myself. "Understood. I'll do it." My voice was clear, free of hesitation. Ashley stood beside me, taking the instruments in hand. Her hands trembled slightly, but her eyes were steady. "I'll support you however I can." That single sentence gave me even more courage. The surgical lights turned on, casting a bright glow over the room. As the battle for life was about to begin, I exhaled deeply and stepped toward the table. I will save this life no matter what. With that vow in my heart, I took hold of the scalpel. The operating room was cloaked in tension. The only sounds were the steady rhythm of the heart monitor and the staff's quiet voices. I calmly put on my gloves and turned my eyes to the pregnant woman on the table. Ashley stood across from me, instruments in hand. Even in her movements, I could see traces of hesitation. When I glanced her way, she met my eyes for a moment. "Michael, I'll be preparing the instruments." Her voice was lined with determination, as if pushing back her own fear. Still, her hands revealed her inexperience. "Understood. Thank you," I answered quietly. I chose my words carefully so as not to put any pressure on her, creating an environment where everyone can focus. That, too, was the responsibility of the lead surgeon. Ryan stood by my side, watching quietly. His presence alone grounded me. Just having him there brought a small sense of calm. "Michael, you remember procedure?" he asked quietly. "Yes, no problem." As I gave that answer, memories from the past flashed through my mind once again. The failure during Emily's surgery, that moment of utter despair, came rushing back. But I fought to keep that shadow from consuming me. "Focus only on the life in front of you." I repeated those words silently to myself. "Scalpel." When I gave the brief instruction, Ashley handed me the instrument, trying to steady her trembling hands. There was still a hint of uncertainty in her fingertips. "It's okay," I whispered in my mind as I took the scalpel from her hand. The cold weight in my palm snapped me back to reality. Under the light, I steadied my grip. The past is gone. All I could do now is stay present. I set my resolve and made the first incision to preserve life. That is my role. The atmosphere in the room was taut, focused. The light illuminated my hands. The patient's face was covered by a mask, but I could sense the small life inside her. Incision complete. I stated quietly and moved the next step. Staring at the bleeding wound, I concentrated to keep my hand steady. "Suction." I gave the order, and Ashley handed me the suction tool without delay. Her motion still held a touch of tension, but the fear was gone. I could feel she was giving everything she had. "You're doing well, Michael." Ryan's calm voice echoed behind me. It felt like a reassuring hand on my back. I moved on, carefully observing the detached placenta. I began stitching the blood vessels. To control the bleeding, I needed precise millimeter-level accuracy. "Michael," Ashley murmured softly. Without looking at her, I answered, "It's all right." I could sense her nod silently in response. Her tension eased just slightly. As time passed, the mood in the room began to change. My hands moved without hesitation, each step exact and assured. Watching me, I could see both Ashley's and Ryan's expressions shift. There was surprise, admiration, and trust in their eyes. "Incredible," Ashley whispered. It sounded like true, heartfelt respect. "You haven't lost it, Michael." Ryan spoke in a low voice. There was a weight in his words that came from knowing my past. When the final suture was complete, I exhaled deeply. "It's done." With those words, the pressure in the room seemed to release at once. The heart rate on the monitor had stabilized. The mother's life had been saved, and the birth of a new life had been safely confirmed. Both mother and child are healthy. Ryan's voice rang out, and sighs of relief spread among the staff. I drew a deep breath and slowly let it out. I realized then that my hand, still clenched unconsciously during the surgery, was so tense it hurt. Thank goodness. The words echoed quietly in my heart. The fact that I had saved a life with my own hands brought me a sense of accomplishment and relief I hadn't felt in years. As I stepped out of the operating room, the pregnant woman's husband was waiting. He bowed deeply to us, his face on the verge of tears. "Thank you. Truly, thank you so much." His voice was full of gratitude and overwhelming relief. A little farther away, Emily stood with tears in her eyes, smiling. "Thank you, brother. Really, thank you." Hearing her words, it felt like the weight I had carried for so long finally began to lift just a little. After the late-night surgery, I found myself in the director's office. The clock on the wall pointed to 2 a.m. The hospital was wrapped in deep silence, broken only by the faint hum of machines in the distance. Ryan picked up the coffee on his desk, took a sip, and looked at me quietly. "Michael, have a seat." I sat down as instructed. As the tension eased from my body, the nerves that had kept me sharp during surgery unraveled all at once, leaving me feeling heavy. "You did well." Ryan's voice was low and calm. "No, I just did what I had to. I wasn't even thinking." Doubt crept back into my mind, the kind that came from picking up a scalpel again after so long. Ryan studied me with a calm gaze. He leaned back in his chair and continued, Michael, after today's surgery, I'm certain you need to return to medicine. His words came suddenly, but there was no hesitation in his voice. I was left speechless. I let out a long breath and finally asked, You're saying I should become a doctor again? Ryan nodded. You've seen for yourself how much your skills are needed, especially in moments like today. His voice was quiet but firm. I averted my eyes and clasped my hands on my knees. Images of Emily's failed surgery flashed in my mind. The blood-soaked table, my trembling hands. The memory gripped my chest. Ryan, I almost lost my sister back then. My voice shook. In that moment, I felt like I'd failed as a doctor. Ever since, I've been terrified to pick up a scalpel again. Ryan listened silently and set his coffee down. Then he spoke gently but with clarity. Michael, that fear is exactly what makes you a great doctor. Fear means you understand the weight of a life. And today you overcame that fear and saved one. His words pierced straight into my heart. But what if I fail again? I don't know if I could ever recover from that. As I let out the fear I had buried for so long, Ryan gave a soft smile and placed a hand on my shoulder. Everyone fears failure, but doctors carry that fear and still choose to save lives. You face it today, and you didn't let it stop you. Don't forget that. After a pause, Ryan continued with a new proposal. Next month, a new hospital is opening. I want you to lead it as a director. Director. The word hit me like a wave. I was still unsure about returning as a doctor, and now director? The weight of that responsibility felt like it could crush me. I'm not sure I deserve that. My voice trailed off, eyes fixed on the desk. I don't think I'm ready for that kind of responsibility. Ryan narrowed his eyes and smiled just a little. Exactly. That's why I want you to take it. His words tightened something in my chest. I was already scared of returning to medicine. How could I possibly lead an entire hospital? It felt impossible. Please let me think about it. Ryan nodded quietly and picked up his coffee again. I stood and opened the door to the office. The cold night air enveloped me as I stepped into the corridor. Up on the hospital rooftop, the wind brushed against my hand. Holding a can of coffee, there were still a few stars above, and the eastern sky had begun to glow faintly with morning light. The memory of the surgery played vividly in my mind. A sensation still burned in my chest, like the lingering rush of adrenaline after a sprint. I could still feel the shape of the scalpel in my palm, and my fingers trembled slightly. I really did it. My whole body was tingling with faint excitement. The intensity of the operation still had a grip on me, making my legs feel unsteady. Just as I took a sip from the can, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned and saw Ashley approaching, her white coat swaying. So you were here? She looked tired, but her eyes held a quiet determination. Standing beside me, she took a deep breath and looked up at the sky. Morning's almost here. That was fast. Her voice was calm, but there was something unspoken in it. I was thinking about the surgery. When I said that, she gave a small nod. I'm really glad you were there, Michael. She looked at me as she said it, but in her eyes, I saw something uncertain. To be honest, I hesitated before the surgery. A few years ago, I was in charge of my sister's surgery, and I made a mistake. She almost died. Ryan had to step in and finish it. I've never forgotten how that felt. She listened quietly, but someone had to act. And out of all the doctors in that room, I knew I was the only one who could. I chuckled softly and added, even so, I was still fighting the urge to run. I kept thinking, what if I mess up again and hurt someone else? As my voice trembled slightly, she nodded with kindness. Anyone would be afraid. But people like you, who carry such a deep sense of responsibility, feel that fear even more. Her words were gentle, as if wrapping around my heart. But when I saw you yesterday, I knew your desire to save lives is stronger than your fear of failing. Her words hit home. It was as if her eyes could see straight into my hesitation. Honestly, I still don't know if going back to being a doctor is the right thing. I admitted. She quietly sat down beside me. You're not alone, Michael. You can rely on us. Just like you did during the surgery. We're with you." Her voice was soft yet resolute. I saw it with my own eyes. "Your skills can save so many lives." As she said it, she gently reached out and touched my hand. That warmth slowly began to calm the unease trembling in my heart. "Please return to being a doctor." Ashley's eyes met mine directly, unwavering. I exhaled deeply and looked up at the night sky. The darkness was beginning to lift. Dawn was near. "Thank you, Ashley," I whispered softly, gently returning the grip of her hand. In that moment, a quiet resolve began to take root deep within me. Rather than turning away from past failures or fear, I would face them, accept them, and move forward. I would walk once more the path of saving lives as a doctor. To stand in front of pain, anxiety, and the weight of life itself without flinching, that is the role I was given, the duty I was meant to fulfill. The sensation of that old tremble still lingered in my palms. But so what? These hands exist to save lives, and they always will. That's what I have to believe, what I must believe. After that, the two of us waited silently for the sunrise. As the sky in the east gradually brightened, I could feel the fog of doubt inside me slowly lifting. "Ashley," I've been making excuses, running from myself. But today I finally realized there's still something I need to do. I've decided to return to being a doctor. She looked at me with surprise at first, then quickly smiled with warmth. "If that's your decision, then I'll support you with everything I have. From now on, let's save lives together." Her words were sincere and strong. I gave her a firm nod. "I'll be counting on you. Let's face this together." At that moment, something inside me changed. The fear hadn't disappeared completely, but knowing Ashley was by my side gave me the courage to move forward. A new morning was beginning, and within me, a new challenge was beginning as well. The wind that morning was cold, but somehow my heart felt warm. I would walk once again on the path of a doctor, saving as many lives as I could.